Hey, everybody, what's going on? It is Lauren deLisa Coleman back with another episode of the Inside series for film.io. We are just going to be bringing you a ton of very cool filmmaker interviews during the Sundance Film Festival. And I have my very next one for you. This one is like really no joke. I'm so excited to have Joey Izzo join us. Joey, what's up? Thank you for coming to us live and direct from LA. And so he is going to tell us about his film, You've Never Been Completely Honest, which is like this very cool hybrid documentary. I will let him do, the justification of full explanation. But this is like just such an amazing like topic. And the way that he and his team have approached it is like insane. So Joey, thank you so much for joining us. Please like kick it off by giving like our viewers a synopsis of this film.
Sure. So You've Never Been Completely Honest is about a 4-day business seminar that took place in 1970 in Palo Alto, California. And it chronicles the firsthand experience of a participant in this kind of executive training seminar from hell. This man, Gene Church, experienced this harrowing ordeal, and he's telling his story, and we're including reenactments and animation to kind of bring this archival audio story to life and make it an immersive experience, or at least attempting that. Yeah.
Really, it's fascinating to watch as you've crafted it with the animation, and then of course just the subject matter. I mean, okay, I'll put myself out there. I used to, when I lived in LA, and we had it in New York too, but I think it lasted longer in LA. Are you familiar with the Learning Annex? Like back in the day. And so, this just reminds me of like, I mean, I would like take some of those classes and things like that. Sure. Not maybe really the self-help ones, but whatever, you know what I mean? Anybody can fall into something where you think, oh, this is what this is. It sounds interesting. Let me sign up. And then it turns out to be this insane thing. So like get a little bit deeper into, your subject's actual experience. And then like, tell us what kind of attracted you, to this story.
Well, man, I thank you for sharing that. It's a very I think that I found the story incredibly relatable because I found myself in similar circumstances throughout my life, or I've also heard stories of friends and family that have signed up for seminar classes, self-help classes, business training seminars. And I've always been kind of curious, like how they all seem the same, but they're all pretending to be different or unique or a one-of-a-kind thing. And my dad was a salesman. And so I grew up kind of in the kind of salesman kind of talk. And, Tony Robbins, I would hear blaring in my dad's like old diesel, Mercedes diesel car on sales trips, So I was kind of familiar with this. And I've always been kind of interested in the intersection of business and self-help and kind of where these things kind of came together. And I just kept on tracing it back from these different organizations that have cropped up back to this really interesting period in the Bay Area that seems like kind of ground zero for the entire seminar experience. The formula was really kind of developed by this company, this fringe company called Leadership Dynamics Institute, which was a kind of executive training, a private executive training seminar conducted by a pyramid scheme company called Holiday Magic Incorporated. That's the other thing with all of these names. It gets very Kurt Vonnegut-like because they'll change their names throughout different periods, to kind of avoid detection or to kind of play fast and loose with taxes and stuff like that. So, just kind of making sense of all these different names was already a struggle. But I basically uncovered this origin story for seminar work and the self-help industry. And I think that some of your, some of what I've experienced and what my friends have experienced, and perhaps you, like, you sign up for these classes and there's something under the surface of what they're telling you that might kind of raise a red flag for you. And I'm here to try and encourage that, like that's coming from a real place. And I think that my film is really trying to suggest that those red flags going off, the origin of that is it kind of comes from this really dark seated foundation that was laid at the very beginning, where the abuse is so visible and tangible in my story. You know, people are being beaten over the head with water pitchers. They're being kept overnight in coffins. They're being strangled half to death. They're being mentally abused, being kept up all night, sleep deprived. They're being harassed. They're being basically like a form of doxing. Like these companies would find out your secret information and then kind of tell everybody in front of you to try and humiliate you. And so they would use these tactics, and they were saying that they were doing this for the good of your own kind of self-improvement, that they needed to kind of break you down, almost like a military boot camp kind of strategy, and then they'll rebuild you. And of course, the naive notion is that in that rebuilding process, they were either willfully unaware or just didn't care that they were bringing a lot of trauma along with them in that rebuilding, and that rebuilding is manufactured to suit their own interests and a larger attachment to their own programs. And I really think that is sort of what the self-help industry does to a large degree, is it takes vulnerable people that are looking for help and kind of gives them a bait and switch, where they'll kind of figure out a way for them to work through a current problem, but then they kind of get them really attached to this new thing that has the potential to create new traumas and new stressors, and and so my film is really trying to explore this kind of origin place for this entire industry,
and not necessarily with full-on credentials to do so. Right.
Yeah. No. Yeah.
That's like the other, like the caveat, yeah, right? Is
exactly.
That we're going to, exactly. All this up because there are people who can do that, but they happen to have, 10, 20 years of experience with that kind of thing and know what to do. So I don't know. I mean, I just think that this is really, really quite fascinating. And, of course, your background that you bring to it. Tell me a little bit about the animation side of things, because I'm assuming you had to do that. Obviously, because, certain footage wasn't available, but, you chose kind of animation, hence, this is kind of like a hybrid approach. How did you kind of come to that? And what were some of the challenges in dealing with that?
Well, the animation was doing a lot of things for us that it was a development. I think when I really wanted to create reenactments of this. I really wanted to create the kind of visual understanding of this, because there aren't those assets. You're right. The only thing we really have is this audio interview after the fact. That is probably the best piece of archive that I have been able to find in several years. But I was really thankful to have that, because I think it really does tell the story from a first person perspective. And the reenactments were there to try and authentically kind of recapture what I would say is not really the reality of the experience on the ground, but really from Gene's own memory space. Mm-hmm. We were always trying to create something that would feel as if it is our own memory. And so, I'm sort of inviting the audience to go into my interview subject's own memory space. And within a memory, there's kind of surreal aspects and dreamlike aspects to our memory, parts of our memory that are fragmented or exaggerated. And so I really thought that the animation could kind of create almost a more balanced memory space, instead of like kind of leaning overly into the authentic or the real.
Yeah,
that felt idea. Untruthful.
I loved how you kind of used animation to be able to create that sense. And okay, all the viewers know that I am too much into, maybe I'm going to cut back a little bit during 2022, but, too much into investigation, discovery, and all these things where, I'm like the reenactment like queen, right? I know when it's going to come up and everything, but it's never done with animation. Like, do you know what I mean? It's these crime kind of dramas. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought it was very unique. But obviously it takes a while. So, how much extra time did that add to the process overall, because you're also, pulling all of this other footage that you have when you were able to get it,
Yeah. Yeah. No, it was a large investment. I mean, it was probably half of our budget, and we really had to want to go for it. But luckily, I teamed up with an incredible studio, Mortis Studio in San Diego, and these two guys, Taylor and Dusty. They really spearheaded the whole endeavor, and we really worked side by side. So what allowed us to work efficiently is knowing exactly what we wanted, and we were able to know that because we storyboarded the entire. I basically edited the audio interview before we went into production. So I had basically I had it down to the second. My kind of previs of the movie was an audio interview cut to music with storyboards so we knew exactly what we needed. And then we were able to look at that animatic, essentially, is what we created, and decide, okay, these shots are going to be reenactment shots. These shots are going to be fully animation, and these are going to have a blend. So we're able to be very economical with our time and just move forward. Whereas sometimes in animation, you could get into a lot of trouble if you're having to kind of redo things or change your mind towards the end of it. We really just sort of stayed committed and tried to move forward. So, it was really completed in a matter of months. So, and we're trying to, come up with a style that was achievable within a small budget where it wouldn't feel cheap. And so we really looked to pioneers of animation like Ralph Bakshi, also animators that would suit the kind of period that we're looking for. So we're specifically looking at 1970s animators.
Right, which is a special kind of vibe.
Yeah, special kind of vibe. And it's very filmic, and you have layered backgrounds of real backgrounds on top of animated characters. I think it's really important to kind of stay within a time and a place when telling a story, if it's fictional or nonfiction. And so I really, if we're doing animation, it just couldn't look like state of the art from 2022. It had to look, kind of similar around this period that we were absorbed in. And so it was a matter of making those kind of smart aesthetic choices, but also just kind of really, truly collaborating all throughout the process. So, while I was shooting the reenactments, the animators were basing their looks on the things that we were shooting. So they were being sent dailies. They were being sent photos of the location and of the props. Yeah. I mean, we were stuck inside for a year. So that's how I used my time, was really just to.
Do you think you would have done it the same way if there wasn't the pandemic? Because it kind of seems like it would have been the thing where you would have shot and then, of course, given them the footage afterwards, right? So sometimes things can help you to see a new type of strategy which you can use going forward. No? Yeah,
no, absolutely. I think it's really a matter of doing the best you can with what you have in that current moment. And but I also I think we got extremely lucky because from my perspective, we were designing a story that was just so suitable for that COVID time. We never were really we were never put in a place where we had this creative ambition and then had to try and figure out the workaround. It was always and we can do this and we're not inhibited. We were always, we just kind of lucked out, or maybe it was kind of in the back of our mind and just kind of guiding our certain instincts. But yeah, it was just a matter of working in the best way that we could within the time and using those things as opportunities, the amount of time to really make the most of a pre-production schedule. Because we just had one day of production. And then all the reenactments were shot in one day on 16 millimeter. Yeah. So the only way to do that was really to have an intense plan and preparation period. So that's what we did.
Wow. So, I mean, that's like a total, because I usually ask, my filmmakers to give a tip, that sounds like, an amazing one. It's just to be super, with the, the kind of layout and the time frame, and you can really accomplish a lot more, than you thought. But I mean, too, it's not just that. I mean, obviously you have a lot of experience. You've had films before, but Cannes and I wrote it down, New York Film Festival.
New York, yeah.
So, very cool to, see you here at Sundance as well. I don't know. I mean, I was going to ask you like, what's next, but I'm also very intrigued about how you're envisioning this as a series, if I understand correctly, right? So how are you kind of thinking about approaching that? Would it be different subject matter, or different subjects regarding, horrible like experiences like self-help from hell, where you need self-help from the self-help that you tried to get? Like, how is that going to like all pan out?
Well, I think, remains to be seen. We shall see. But I would say that
so you haven't really like laid it all out yet. Okay, cool.
Yeah, it's definitely in the process. But I would say that I think it would just kind of take a page from the short. The short really is a kind of model to explore the history of the self-help movement. And so much in the same way that we stayed sort of like really kind of devoted to the subject and the time and the place, I got a lot out of that experience, kind of modeling our aesthetics and our design around this period and being very period specific and feeling authentic, while also being allowed to kind of create this like hybrid approach, the sensorial, kind of multimedia approach to telling a first person story. I think that'll carry through. So I'm really interested in connecting the dots for people and telling kind of large stories and putting a lot of information that's been kind of spread out there and giving it in one package that feels like it's evolving in time. So I think with the series, we'll do something very similar, but just sort of kind of pick up where the short's leaving off and take us all the way up till now.
So now, what do you think about this? Because I feel like, wow, believe it or not, you guys, we've been at this since, I guess, May. We started with the Tribeca Film Festival, Joey. And so I've had a chance to really get inside the minds of a lot of different filmmakers. And I feel like this is either something that's new to me, or it is, actually a trend, but more of this idea of taking a short and, expanding it into a series or some other form of content, whatever. Do you feel as well that that's a trend, or, since you've been in the space for, many years, do you think that that's something that has always, kind of been, or what do you think? I don't know. I just feel like with the advent of, streaming, obviously mobile, we're going to be getting into meta and so much more. It's not just about like kind of the short for the short's sake, but I'm finding it taking all kinds of potential formats and people just kind of playing with that as filmmakers. And I think it's really exciting.
Yeah, I think so too. And I don't know if I'm not sure if I know. I mean, I've definitely made shorts that were, I think ideas are very hard. Like a good idea, they don't grow on trees. And when you do have them, like I've made shorts that I had no series potential. I've made shorts that I had no feature idea for, like even shorts that people have bugged me, like assumed I had a feature for. I'm like, no, this is the end of the story. So it's like, I think it really does vary, but I think it's worth any creative's time to think about ways to expand on their work, because shorts are so hard to make, and you might as well get the most opportunity out of it and think about ways to kind of build. It's very hard to kind of create a short, stop, and then change directions. I've done it. This is an example of it. I was making I came from the experimental world, got into narratives, then kind of burnt out on a traditional narrative path, and then got back to kind of experimental documentary space that felt more true to me now. So, I don't think my path has been very fluid and calculated by any means, but I feel fortunate that, I've been obsessed with the self-help industry and with this story for so many years. And it feels great to be able to distill it down into a short, but that kind of passion and enthusiasm I have for the subject that's in the short is definitely kind of beyond just this one project. So, I hope to continue that definitely into the future. And I would encourage any creative person to just kind of think around their project and to see kind of past it. And that would even be you were mentioning that sometimes you ask for some advice, and I kind of did hint at this, but I would also really encourage filmmakers to try and put as much post-production into their into the kind of pre-production as possible. Like try and do as much as you can before shooting as possible. That's something that I avoided for a very long time, like almost kind of skittish, because just having a script isn't enough, I think, to be really economical with your time. I think I'm really encouraged. I got really into kind of editing my own projects over the past 10 years, and using that strength, that post-production strength, has been a real blessing and a huge savings for me as a director, because I can kind of create these kind of crude little edits based on my script, and so I think building creative assets around just, so not being just kind of shackled to the script, but thinking creatively in the pre-production process and creating these materials for yourself will just kind of allow you to save a lot of time, money, and headache, and allow you to kind of do kind of impossible things. Whereas, other people that are only have just a paper script that are going into production, you're shooting a lot of takes, you're looking for what you need, and that can be helpful. But, I think I've definitely, in this experience, I've definitely learned kind of new creative ways to kind of activate the story in ways that are outside of just a script format.
I love this idea and kind of almost the intent of like taking time, the same time that you have, but using it in different ways. So, whether you are using the time before to actually like maximize the opportunity, and then thinking about what can happen after in terms of what you can do with the content and how you can expand it, is just really, I think, really just such an opportunity that filmmakers today have, that like you wouldn't have probably been thinking that same way. Like in the 60s, there was only but so many, kind of platforms where you could put something, right? And so now I just think it's just, really, really fascinating. So, I'm really so glad that you're able to share that with our viewers. And I guess my final question might be, well, what was it like when, you knew you were going to have the film at Sundance?
It was incredible. I mean, it was, I've heard of these calls, my whole life, like getting the call from Sundance, and it definitely caught me off guard. It's funny. I mean, in the past I've submitted to Sundance and not gotten in, and I've been, really wrecked by that, that I've really allowed that to kind of go to my head.
But hopefully you didn't go to any self-help, bad self-help.
Yeah, no. But I had finally like reached a point in my career where, I think it's kind of a better policy to, apply to these things and forget about it. I had finally kind of reached that point, in my career where I had applied and forgot about it, and I was continuing to develop the project. And so it really did kind of catch me out of the blue. I really wasn't watching a pot of water waiting for it to boil. So it really did kind of catch me by surprise. And I just feel really thankful. I've been really obsessed with the history of Sundance, and of course, admiring, a lot of their programming, the directors that they've championed. So it's still pretty surreal to be included in amongst those people, past and present. And I'm just looking forward to enjoying the experience and, getting to speak with people about the project, and something I love blabbering about with my friends for so much. I get to kind of harass strangers about this, this weird story.
Very
so that's
cool.
great.
I think that is just so great, Joey. Major congratulations. Anything else you want to add before we kind of wrap up?
The only other thing I'd really like to add is that, I had, when I first uncovered this story, I found this book called The Pit, A Group Encounter Defiled, that was written by this man, Gene Church, who is who's the person who's speaking in our short. So he's our interview subject. And so that's how I first heard about this story. And then I got to speak with Gene. I spoke with him on several occasions, and we were developing a bigger project, and then Gene had passed away. And, during that time when we were developing a project, I had uncovered this audio cassette, and, I felt really kind of inspired to make this short on behalf of Gene, to get his story out there. I know that he was really excited by my approach, and I know that he would have wanted it to be made. And so, that's what was really kind of hanging over my head, while I was developing this project. And, and then when I finished it and when it got into Sundance, I knew that the next thing I needed to do was to reach out to Gene's family, who I hadn't been in contact with. And that could have gone any way.
Mm-hmm.
So I was really kind of a little bit nervous about that, and also excited. And I did manage
to... that you were working on it though, didn't they?
No.
Really?
No, they had no idea. No, he had passed away. And so I was really working kind of on my own. And I had the tape from my own resources. So, he wasn't really involved with this piece of archive.
Okay.
I had told him about it, but, he wasn't really involved. And so, when it was finished, I did get in touch with the family, and I'm very pleased to kind of to receive their blessing. They're so excited about the short. They were so appreciative to have their brother and their grandfather and father's story to get out there. And so they've been really encouraging of me, and are really proud of the short. So I really want to thank them for giving me their blessing. Of all audience members, their approval means the world to me. And so I really want to thank the Gene Church family for being a supporter of this short.
That's so nice. So that you can have other, adoring fans, let us know how we can follow you, check this out, et cetera, et cetera. Now's the time to promo. Go for it, Joey.
All right. Well, I mean, you could probably follow me on Instagram if you would like. It's mostly a personal account, but starting to share stuff with the movie. That's at My First Video Project.
That's the handle. My First Video Project. Okay.
That's right.
And what about a site for the film, or you, or both?
No site. Yeah. I mean, no site for the movie. There's
Joey,
nothing like that.
It's two
I know.
short filmmakers who do not have not even a landing page for the film. Come on now.
I know. We're the bad boys. We don't have any of that. But we will. We definitely will. We're planning some in-person events around the short in February. So if you're in the LA area, you'll be hearing more about that. But if you like, follow me on Instagram, and please check out the short at Sundance. That's really the best way. I'll be hanging out in the metaverse area. So if you have more questions or comments, or you want to hang out, find me there.
All right. Well, Joey, thank you so much. And I hope the festival is just great for you. And
Thank you.
I mean, I think it's a very important time for this to come out, because I'm sure people will be, I don't know if people say so much self-help anymore. Maybe now it's turned into a seemingly less harmless word of wellness. But, given the pandemic, I'm sure that people will be, these types of people kind of rear their heads. Like you said, they really know how to regenerate almost. And sometimes it's not, in a very good way. They're regenerating to take advantage of people, whether it's financially and or psychologically. And so you have to, stay on top of things, get referrals and things like that. Yeah,
I think, just staying informed and, knowing a little bit more about the history, I think can be very helpful to make smart choices, especially when it comes to your own mind.
Yeah.
And nowadays, I think there are in some ways it's more dangerous now than ever, even though the language has been softened, the physical aspects, though there's still some incredibly shocking stories out there that are exactly the same as what happened in 1970, almost, word for word, exactly the same kinds of abuses. You do more commonly see kind of softened approaches, but I think I would make the argument that even though it's softened underneath, there's kind of a rotten core there. And so, and just with the access and availability of technology, it makes these people a click away. And so even family members that want to protect their loved ones, they find it very difficult because they can move them back home. But, as we all know, it's very hard to control what somebody's engaging online. And so, I think the best thing we can do is kind of share these stories of abuse of people that have been there, and just kind of help tell this story that has somewhat been shadowed willfully by a multi-billion-dollar industry for 50 years.
Unbelievable. Again, thank you, Joey, so much for taking the time. I really appreciate it. And you guys, I hope that you have enjoyed listening to this. You have to check this film out, both from the artistic, side and also, the subject matter. So stay tuned for the very next one. I'll be right here bringing them to you. I am Lauren deLisa Coleman for film.io. Thank you so much for watching.